Well, I am going to call this meeting to order. It's 9:27 a.m. We are missing one member, but I understand he'll be here at 9:30. Mr. Lotes. Rosie, are we ready to begin the meeting?
Yes, Madam Chair, we're ready whenever you are.
You know, I would like to begin this meeting by recognizing Tom Battaglia. Today is his final B&G meeting, and I want to thank him for his board service and for serving on this committee for the past 5 years. Tom and I joined this board together in 2017, so we have spent the last 8 years together here. And since joining the board, we have overcome significant challenges and moved SDCERS forward in very positive directions. We will miss you, Tom. You've made a tremendous contribution to our organization. Thank you. I would also like to, I'm going to wait for Paul to get here because I'm going to recognize Paul for completing his first term. But on a personal note, I think you run the best meeting of any of us. And I try to emulate you in your professionalism, but I never make it. So thank you. Rosie, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a quorum with the following member absent, Mr. Chris Brewster, and then Paul Lotes, as you so eloquently stated, will be just running a little bit late today.
Thank you, Rosie. Rosie, do we have any public comment today?
No, Madam Chair, we don't have any public comment for today's meeting.
All right, great. Moving on to Section 4 of the action items. We have 6 action items on today's agenda. Our first action item is staff's recommendation to approve the results of the 2025 Active General and Fire Safety Board member election. Jessica, will you please introduce this?
Good morning. As I think you are all aware by now, we have 3 elected board members who are finishing their 4-year terms on March 31st. That would be Tom Battaglia, Brett Bartolotta, and Paul Lotes. So we held elections for these board seats, which began in November. We had 3 nominees for the active general board member seats. Brett Bartolotta ran again, Kent Morris, and Stanley Martinez. And then we had 2 nominees for the fire safety board member seat, Paul Lotes and Tim Robles. Voting in both elections concluded on January 30th. Brett Bartolotta, Kent Morris, and Paul Lotes received the majority of votes in their respective elections, so congratulations on continuing your seats, and we look forward to welcoming Kent Morris in May. If there are no questions, then we just ask the committee to recertify the results of these elections.
Thank you. Would any committee member like to speak on this matter? May I have a motion in a second? Would anybody like to speak before we vote? All right. Please record your vote. Rosie?
And Madam Chair, just for the record, this motion was moved by Thomas Battaglia, seconded by Paul Kaufman. And with all votes in, this motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Our second action item is appointment of Mia Horinsky and Gary McCormick to a second term as an independent non-board member of the Audit Committee. Greg, will you please introduce this action item?
Certainly. It's good to see the committee this morning. Before us this morning is a recommendation to reappoint to the Audit Committee Mia Horinsky and Gary McCormick to a second term. And the Audit Committee is unique in SDCERS governance that it includes independent non-board members on the Audit Committee. And it's the responsibility of the SDCERS board to make appointments of these types of independent non-board members should a vacancy arise. And with Gary and Mia ending their first term, we have 2 vacancies. The good news is both Mia Horinsky and Gary McCormick would really, really like to continue their service on the Audit Committee. And I will share from my perspective, I believe Gary and Mia have both served with distinction on the Audit Committee, have been very valuable members. They are both CPA with audit expertise, and so they really bring a lot to the table. We would be very fortunate to have them continue their service on the audit committee. And I would recommend the board, or this committee, recommend to the board that we reappoint them to a second term.
Both Mia and Gary are audit partners. So they are in the trenches every day. So we're very fortunate that they take their very busy schedules, the time out of their schedules to be on this committee. So we appreciate their work and we thank them. Does any committee member have a comment? May I have a motion in a second? And shall we vote? Moved by Paul, seconded by Christina.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie. Okay, this is the high point of the meeting. Staff's recommendation to approve the SDCERS administrative budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2026.
Boy,
The budget, administrative budget.
I think action plan would be item 3.
Oh, I hopped right forward to 4. I was so
So
excited.
excited.
I was so excited. Thanks. All right. Our third action plan is staff's recommendation to approve the SDCERS action plan for fiscal year ending June 30, 2026. Greg, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, I'd like to introduce an item that is exciting, but not as exciting as the budget.
Right.
All right. But we do have an action plan here at SDCERS, and it serves as a way to align all of our resources to critical projects that are critical to the success of fulfilling our mission, our values, and our priorities. So the action plan is built around 4 key priorities: excellence in servicing our members, data accuracy, system integrity, investment program excellence, and leadership in pension system governance. And in your meeting materials is our proposed action plan for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026. And there are 24, staff believes are critical, 24 mission critical projects to help us move the organization forward. Some will be completed within a year. Most will be multi-year. We try to put some level of detail in there without getting too much detail in it. So we try to, at a very high level, put in our objectives, put in specific projects with multi-year milestones. That helps not only the board with their oversight, but also staff with alignment to make sure that we stay focused on what we're planning to do. Fortunately, I will not be discussing all 24 projects in detail with you today. I would be glad to if you ask me to, but actually I wanted to mention what's not in the action plan this year. And what's not in the action plan this year is reopening the city's pension plan. And I bring that up because when I first joined SDCERS 7 years ago, while it was never on the action plan, it was one of our strategic directives is to make sure we were ready so that if and when the city opened their plan, we'd be able to do it. We'd be able to do it from managing our workload, having information technology together, having the staff available and prepared to do it. And so admittedly, it happened years before we thought it would, but we were ready, and I believe we successfully accomplished that. We've completed phase 1, 2, and 3, and we're in the midst of wrapping up phase 4, the police tiers. I bring up that history because I believe today we also stand in a similar position that we did 7 years ago, in that now we're looking at kind of a paradigm change for organizations, including SDCERS, where we're going to need to be able to pivot and be ready. And as I think everybody's probably figured out, it's artificial intelligence. And you can't just jump into that. You actually have to have the infrastructure and the foundation ready to implement tools of this nature. And from my perspective, there's 3 main areas, and they're not explicitly outlined as artificial intelligence get ready, but they are. They're kind of sprinkled in. And the first area is really your information technology environment needs to be able to take advantage of these tools. And I'm really impressed that we have our IT strategic plan, which is built to actually make sure that we are up to date with technology, make sure we're up to date with the versions of the different programs that we use, and also we're kind of paradigm shifting into the new processing environment, which actually leverages the cloud, which fits in really well with using artificial intelligence tools. So that is a key item. And within the strategic plan, we see our software framework upgrade. So that's a key component of being ready. And also our migration to Microsoft 365. So those are really mission critical projects, but also put us in really good position to have success in the future. The second is really having a comprehensive set of accurate business rules to teach and guide AI. AI is only as smart as the information or the rules that you give it. And so it has to learn. And so we are currently going through and challenging all of those business rules and doing our best to document. As you know, we've been going through a best practices strategic plan where we're going through and looking how we process, and we've been documenting. But we're also, I'm really excited about the SDCERS University, and we talk a lot about that as a tool to help teach and make sure that we have succession planning. But also that really will, I believe, turn out to be one of the backbones of making us IA compliant going forward, like in our benefits processing and member services areas. So that's a really, really critical project. And the third is quality data. Ever since I think I've been in this pension industry now over 4 decades, and quality data is always at the top of everybody's list. It's always an ongoing challenge. But even if you have the information technology, you've got all the good business rules, if you don't have good data to do something about it, you're not going to get a good result, either with, they call it human trying to figure out the rules or artificial intelligence trying to figure out the rules. You still need good quality data. And while that is not a specific milestone in the strategic plan, it's something that we work on all the time. And we do have projects for that. So our action plan is a living document. There are things that happen during the year that pop up, which we focus all of our resources on. We have to pivot. Trying to think back historically when the IRS decides they want to change the way we do withholding. It's like, whoop, brakes on everything. You take care of that because it's a mission critical thing, even though it wasn't on your plan. So it is a living document. If things come up, we will address those. And also, this is a plan. So when we look at these multi-year projects, sometimes we find the need to accelerate some items or decelerate items or terminate items altogether, depending on the environment. So, but this is our plan moving forward for 2026. And we'd love some feedback or approval, and that's my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the complexity of it. Do we have a motion? And a second?
It was moved by Paul Kaufman and seconded by Paul Lotz, and welcome, Paul. And please cast your vote.
All votes are in?
With all votes in, this motion passes 5-0, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Hello, Paul. You'll be happy to know that you were first on our agenda today. And we approved the election results. So thank you. You get to stay with us. Yeah. And we're so happy that you decided to stay. You're a tremendous addition to this board, and you look very nice today. Look at you and your.
Yeah. I appreciate all the supportive words that have been extended to me when considering whether to continue with this position or not. So that was very meaningful, and I'm thankful for that from the board and the administrators. So thank you. I'm happy to be here for 4 more years.
We appreciate your time. We know that your work is very important, so thank you for being here. Now, drum roll. Here it is. Ted, we have the budget for fiscal 2026.
Good morning, everybody. You should have all that information within your board packets. I am pleased to present our FY 2026 budget. To get started, our budget is going up. As expected, the big picture, we will be at $19.2 million. This is up approximately $919,000 from the FY 2025 budget. The primary drivers are increased salaries and fringe at the City of San Diego, which then flows through to SDCERS. We have contractual increases in IT. Our IT division structures follow-on contracts with the city's IT vendors. So we have our own separate contracts with those vendors, and there's going to be cost increases there. And then increases on general operations related to increases in depreciation, rent, and an actuarial experience study, which will occur in FY '26, as well as an actuarial audit that is required. In turning to the pie chart, I love this pie chart because it predominantly gives us a visual view that more than 60% of our overall budget is salaries and fringe costs. It's important to note that for those fringe costs, they are passed through from the City of San Diego. We have used information provided by the city during the month of January. Those are not the final fringe rates. The city has not approved or passed their budget yet, so the actual fringe rates could differ from those amounts. But since we don't control those rates, we basically provide them to the board on a quarterly basis as to what actually happens. SDCERS is a continuous process improvement organization. We right-size the organization to meet our operational responsibilities. We love this graph because it shows that at one point in time, SDCERS had 65 people, and this is prior to the implementation of the IRIS pension system, the idea that the city had closed its pension plan to all new entrants, and then what had occurred over the years through operational efficiencies gained through the new pension system and streamlining operations and changing our processes. SDCERS does this on a continual basis, and I wanted to highlight that you might see in the 2023 year, we had originally budgeted for 51 people and wound up the year at 53, and that was primarily due to the operational necessities because of the reopening of the pension system, and more importantly, all the work that had to occur within our pension system and all the details with our actuaries. In 2024, we went up one head count to 54 people, once again, primarily to deal with these situations. In 2025, we dropped one head, experiencing we were over the hump, so to speak, with Prop B, but we are still, even to this day, dealing with certain populations of people with special circumstances and conditions. It should be noted that from 53 people in 2025 that we are projecting to drop to 50 people, or 6% reduction in 2026. Of those 3 positions, we are taking those 2 of those positions here at the end of 2025 and reducing headcount. That will also flow through as a cost savings for FY '26. And then in FY '26, we will further reduce by 1 head. Our salaries and fringe budget is $12.2 million. This is up $421,000 for the coming fiscal year. Our legal fees budget remains flat at $400,000, but the makeup of the individual components within the legal budget are changing. We project that litigation costs will increase by about $140,000. Actual litigation could differ, but we are projecting that. That increase is then offset by reductions in fiduciary, our disability hearings, and reduced legal tax compliance costs due to efficiencies within the legal division for those programs. Before talking about capital expenses, we also know, per the schedule, that general operations are going up. Primary reasons are related to an increase in depreciation costs. You heard Greg mention in the action plan the IT-focused elements. We are going to be, for FY26, in the second year of a multi-year IT strategic plan where we are required to upgrade our systems with our main vendor, which happens to be Microsoft. In addition, we have work that will then be implemented with respect to the Irish pension system. And of course, something near and dear to my heart, the sunsetting of Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains, which will require SDCERS to move to its successor accounting system. We don't use the city's SAP system, nor do I believe we should for our accounting purposes. As a result, our capital expense budget for FY 2026 remains flat compared to 25, but it's still approximately $703,000. Those projects above, as you can see on the screen, relate to the IT strategic plan to really deal with modernizing our software and infrastructure, as well as maintaining the Irish pension system. And right there at the end is my financial system upgrade, which is going to be a multi-step process by which IT first upgrades the system to a later version prior to us, to buy us some additional time to navigate the process of selecting a new system. It should not be forgotten that when I was talking about general operations, that there are two big, what we consider at least one-time costs for the coming fiscal year that relate to the actuarial costs. We're required once every 3 years to have an experience study. FY26 is that third year. In addition, when we went to RFP and selected the new actuary, we also are required as part of that process to have an actuarial audit where another independent actuary firm will actually look at the work performed by our current actuary. So SDCERS,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Quick question. I probably should know this, but I may have forgotten it. We don't amortize any of these capital expenses over time, do we?
when you say amortize, we depreciate them.
Depreciate, excuse me,
So we don't expense them. That's kind of a GAAP requirement. If I did that for purposes of this reporting, I would have to then unwind that for purposes of the financial audit. It is something that is near and dear to my heart in terms of potentially going to an expenditure basis based upon the fact that we have a balance sheet in excess of $11.5 billion, right? And that amount is considered immaterial. But as an accountant, we follow GAAP, and it's just nuance.
This is a GAAP-related
Yes.
issue. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So we want to deliver on our mission to provide accurate and timely benefits and ensure the trust fund's safety, integrity, and growth. When we say that, the idea is that there are operational steps that each one of the divisions here at SDCERS puts into place to ensure that we are meeting that mission and our fiduciary duty to our members, the retirees, and the plan sponsors. The plans are getting more complex, and when I note that, we've always talked about Prop B, but over the past year, we've also dealt with plan changes for both the airport and the port, and that takes bandwidth. Something that a small, compact organization like SDCERS deals with it day in and day out, and we will be smaller next year. but our responsibilities will continue to grow. And with that, I will open the floor to any discussions or questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Ted. That was excellent. A lot of work goes into that. We certainly appreciate it.
I believe we need to vote on this. Do we need? Yes.
Yeah, we do. Do we have a motion in a second? All votes are
Madam
in?
Chair, if I may, it was moved by Thomas Battaglia, seconded by Paul Kaufman. And with all votes in, this motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to our fifth action item, staff's recommendation to approve a work order with Sagitech Solutions to replace the pension administration's software workflow engine. Michelle?
Good morning. A little background on this action item. In 2011, SDCERS selected Sagitech Solutions as our pension administration software vendor through a competitive request for proposal process. We entered into a long-term relationship with them with a 3-year implementation and 5-year support agreement. Since that date, we've extended that support agreement twice for 2 5-year periods. And I was here during the product selection period. I went back and reviewed some notes and found that there were 3 points that made Sagitech superior to their other competitors. One was their product scalability. They were able to demonstrate that their product could scale as technology grew and changed. They also showed that their product could easily be scaled for business process changes and plan changes. And through the last 10 years, we've realized that they've had a proven track record that as plans change and new plans come on, that we are relatively easily implement new plans. They also showed that they have depth in their technology expertise. They have a large bench of technologists that can help support our environment. And their pricing is competitive. They were not, at that point in time, they weren't the cheapest, but they weren't the most expensive. They were within the range. This product went into our production environment in 2014, and we branded it as our own product, the Integrated Retirement Information System, IRIS. This is considered our enterprise solution. So IRIS manages every point of a member's career with SDCERS, from point of entry into the employment to post-death benefits. It also runs our pension payroll, tax reporting, and we have member portal and vendor portals to automate some of that communication to both employers, vendors, and members. So within IRIS, we have integrated workflow engine that distributes work throughout the organization. The original platform that they built this engine on is now a Microsoft discontinued product. They're still supporting it, but they're sunsetting it in the future, so they're not going to provide enhancements or continue to do patching, or potentially in the future when they do sunset it, not address any vulnerabilities that could be in the product. So this again demonstrates Sagitech's ability to scale the product. They created their own proprietary workflow engine to offer to their customers. SDCERS IT team and benefits admin had a demo of this product, and we found that it met all of our existing needs, but it also has enhancements that we're very excited about. It has real-time dashboarding that management can go in and see where business processes are. They can get metrics, and there's management reports, so they can see some trending in different business processes. So we're really actually excited about this change. Sagitech continues to build on their platform, so every about 4 to 5 years, they put new releases out. As they continue to mature their product, this product will be integrated into their line of business. So it is a prerequisite to continue to take advantage of their future frameworks. This work order is all-encompassing, so it includes project management, development, training, and post-production warranty support. So within the SDCERS contracting policy, for contracts over $100,000, it is within the board's discretion to do a request for proposal for some competitive bidding. You do have the option to waive that. So because of this long-term strategic partnership with Sagitech, it's my recommendation that you authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute the work order with Sagitech Solutions in amount not to exceed $240,000, and to replace our workflow foundation within IRIS and waive that competitive bid process. With that, I'm open to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. It makes a lot of sense to me that when you have something that has become kind of like a backbone, that it makes sense to kind of do a sole source to continue to stay with them. My question is, would there ever be a time when would we go out for an RFP to kind of, for an enterprise solution? Would that be something that would come up again for us?
Yeah, I think there's 3 points that we'd look at to consider that. One is the scalability, that maybe we've outgrown the capacity of this system. It can't be modernized to meet our needs or be adjusted to align to our business process. 2 would be if there are security vulnerabilities that are found that can't be addressed. We actually do weekly scans of this application, and then we do annual vulnerabilities where they do a deep dive into the code. And anytime that we do find vulnerabilities, they're able to remediate them very easily. So once we get to a point where they're not able to do that, it might be a point of discussion. The 3rd is cost, and looking at, are we exceeding what the market costs were? And I did reach out to, when we implemented this in 2011 to 2014, we had an oversight vendor, LRWL, that provided oversight project management. I reached out to them to see what the going prices were for today's implementation. And you're looking at, for a system, our range, they're a low end to high end between 9 to 12 million for the implementation. We did a 36-month implementation, which he said is not heard of these days. Average of an implementation is 48 months. So you're looking at a four-year implementation, the commitment from your staff to that project, oversight vendor, as well as the product vendor. And then you have ongoing costs. So even our ongoing costs are about 20% less than what he quoted current market costs are. Market costs now, though, it's not a one-for-one comparison because a lot of people are doing hosted solutions. Their support model might be a little different of how they're supporting their release management. So it's hard to compare our prices to other customers, but he was able to give me kind of a soft range of where we are. So I think once we start looking that maybe we're getting within what current prices are, we may consider what our options are.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How does it compare with other pension systems of a comparable size?
In what sense? How does it compare?
Cost. I'm talking about cost.
In costs, in ongoing costs? Like I said, it's hard to compare our model to other models. If I were to compare it to SDCERS, SDCERS has more support staff that are supporting regular changes, their release management, so they have more dedicated developers. And I can only go by what I heard, what I was able to get back from our consultant back at that point in time. He said that our prices are still below what he's seen the median is these days.
Does the Association of California Pension Plans, like CalPERS, do they ever publish any surveys on comparable costs?
They do for personnel that work for the retirement systems. There's certain, like they do CEOs, chief information officers, general counsel, but they don't do vendors, and they've never really done that type of survey.
Okay, thank you. So may I have a motion and a second? Moved by Tom. Seconded by Paul.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 5-0. And the second, if I may, just for the record, was by Paul Kaufman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 6, staff's recommendation to amend the contracting policy and delegation of authority to execute contracts and other documents, the education policy, travel and expense reimbursement policy, and Division 6 of the board rules, which is the deferred retirement option plan. We have no staff that are going to speak on this matter. Do we have any questions from the board? May I have a motion and a second, please? Moved by Tom Battaglia, seconded by Paul Kaufman. And let's vote.
And with all votes in, Madam Chair, this motion passes 5-0.
We're doing great, and that sums it up for our action items. On to our reports. Natasha is going to give us her report on member services.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, we do have the staff report. I wanted to share some brief highlights, including the fact that I did get my hair cut, so that is the most important thing to talk about. We'll start off with the call center and our total number of calls in January. We're actually just shy of 1,900 with a great wait time of 2 minutes and 38 seconds. And February calls have gone down to 1,606 calls with 2 minutes and 32 seconds. The top trending calls to our call center are those relating to the 1099s, Social Security windfall. We do not have people's checks, so that's something we've had to tell people. Member portal access and drop inquiries. I also wanted to highlight an exciting change in our team. Based on the recent experience we had in November and December, where we had an overwhelming amount of inquiries for drop appointments, we decided to create a backup process and have our call center supervisor, Andres Molina, shadowing our counselors and training with them so he can serve as a backup during summer and winter when we receive the most requests for drop entry and exit. And I want to acknowledge them publicly, both Andreas, Sarah, Sarema, and Selene, for their work in coming up with a way to ensure that all of our members can have access in a timely manner. Also, I wanted to mention that we are continually, as Ted mentioned, looking to have operational and budgetary efficiencies. We're always asking how we can tighten our belt without impacting our level of service. So we do anticipate a savings of about 45%, which translates to about $17,000 for our PAFR and winter newsletter mailing, which is going out this week. It's still winter, technically. That is, we added a fold to reduce the size of the newsletter and used a lighter paper stock, and that saved us quite a bit of money. So I wanted to acknowledge the work that Jessica Taylor did to facilitate that savings and ensuring that we are always trying to be more efficient without sacrificing service and quality. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was great.
Thank you.
Doing good work.
Yes.
Thank you for your report. Sandra, Benefits Administration.
Good morning. You have my Benefits Administration report in your materials. I used the majority of my report to talk about the airport's Social Security opt-out vote. Very exciting for us. Unless we someday administer a startup pension plan, we will never deal with another 218 agreement again. Happy to answer any questions on how that affects us on our end. The voting did recently close, but we don't have final numbers yet to know how many people have decided to opt out of Social Security. And just as an anecdote as well, I can tell you that I heard from one retiree who actually got $6,600 back because of the windfall elimination provision having gone into effect. So money is rolling in for people. So nice. Except for this one person happened to owe $7,000 in taxes, so I think it was a wash. But anyway, the transition for retiree health administration is also going smoothly. We continue to work with benefit outsourcing solutions to provide them with the historic information on prior reimbursements and their allowance information, as well as confirmation of member retirements and payee deaths. We're continuing to tweak that reporting that goes back and forth, and I think we're getting close to being able to rely on those reports a little bit more and cutting down on some of the back and forth between us. But that's going pretty smoothly. Lastly, the city is currently conducting an audit to verify dependent eligibility for the city's health, dental, and vision plans, and that is for both active and retired members. As you can imagine, we are getting some calls. The city is requiring not only proof of marriage in the form of a marriage certificate or domestic partnership documents, but also to verify current marital status. They're asking for tax returns or some other type of proof of current cohabitation or joint ownership of house or property. So a lot of members calling in, retirees calling in, concerned that they're providing this very personal information to a third party. The city is using Gallagher, their benefits administrator. So we are assuring the retirees that this is a legitimate request, and we're all also gathering all of our information so that our spouses and children continue to be covered, and advising retirees to do the same. And then just moving on to the members owing in excess of $10,000 report. We did have one new overpayment this cycle, a pretty big one. And this was the death of a continuance who was living in a state that we know does not report deaths to a publicly available source. We got the notification through Cigna Healthcare. They let us know that this person had passed away in 2019. The legal division is actively working on getting those funds back. I think we're in pretty good shape. We're kind of attacking it from a couple of different angles, potentially through the probate court, and then also just a return through the bank where the funds currently reside. Happy to answer any questions about any of that.
Bobby, I got a question.
Go ahead.
At the board retreat last month, we talked about how the city's the only plan sponsor that pays the interest. How does that work with these individuals if they're a city member?
For death overpayments, Tom?
Just in any type of overpayment where there may be interest that's owed?
Yeah. Generally speaking, if it's an error that was not the member's fault, then we bill the city annually when we send the ADC bill in June, late June, for the July payment. We actually itemize all of these and include those.
So these items here, if it wasn't the member's fault, that category of the interest is just going to have that running tab, but it really gets billed over to the city?
On these overpayments that you're seeing on the over 10,000 report, these have interest that's running. These were choices made by these members, so on this particular report, these members do owe interest.
Okay. I'm just trying to think if there was amount due back, the person can take indefinite if it wasn't their fault to pay that back because the interest doesn't matter to them. Is there a conversation that you guys have with them to try to make sure that gets paid back sooner rather than later so the city's not continually paying this interest?
We do. We send annual letters out every spring when the flowers come up. We send out reminder letters to people that they want to get these resolved before there's another year of interest.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's June 30th, they have until?
Yes, June 30.
July 1st it gets, okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the circumstance of that large overpayment, have you had any difficulty in collecting?
It's been a challenging one, just because it's so, so much time has gone by. But I think we're in pretty good shape, it sounds like, to be able to recover most of it. We understand that money has really just been sitting in the bank account. There was a probate that was opened and already closed. So that would be one avenue. We could reopen the probate, but legal is actually working directly with the bank at this point just to see if we can just pull those funds back without having to reopen the probate. So it's a two-prong approach at this point.
Have you had any discussions with the family?
My button doesn't work. I'm loud. Yes, we have had some discussions with the family. Thank you, Greg. We've tried to address this on multiple fronts. We really appreciate all of Sandra's team's efforts on this. So the decedent passed away in Arizona, but probate was handled by someone else in a different state. It's one of those situations where someone died quietly and no one knew exactly what was going on where. So we've retained counsel in Arizona to help us with anything we need there. We're working closely with the bank that has the funds, and those funds are currently frozen until we get some releases from the beneficiary of the account holder. So overall, I think it's a great example of the efforts that we take to try to find people who shouldn't be paid because they passed away. Just last year, we hired a second vendor to help us find decedents. With that new vendor came just a handful of people who had passed away years ago, this being one of them. So in many ways, I think we're able to plug that hole a little bit better, and we're trying to clean up that situation with this overpayment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. Nice to see you again. Michelle.
Thank you. So IT has a number of projects in progress right now as we're working to close out our FY25 strategic plan efforts. I wanted to report that since my committee report was submitted, we were able to finalize the enhancement to our wide area network. Sean Kilpack, our operations manager, led this project by coordinating a number of vendors. SDCERS utilizes the City of San Diego's network to access the internet. Until this week, we had one circuit that came into SDCERS. That means that if there were issues on the city side or the city did maintenance, our port to the internet was impacted. It doesn't impact our internal networking, but it does impact our connection to the internet. This additional circuit gives us redundancy, but it doesn't only give us redundancy on that circuit, but we have a different provider supporting that circuit. So we have multiple layers of redundancy. This really stages us very well, as Greg mentioned, of our future roadmap as we move into more cloud technologies and into the M365 world. This gives us some more bandwidth to be able to have more efficient processing and communication with those cloud providers. So I wanted to give a shout out to Sean Kilback. That was a big effort, coordinating with building engineering, service providers, City of San Diego, and Zensar to get that circuit in place. We did find that he did some comparisons on speed. We're getting a speed of over 5 times faster than we were on our previous circuit. So it may be transparent to end users, but as far as processing and downloading data, it's a big improvement. Last month, I shared with the audit committee, we received very late notice last month that there was going to be a planned power outage by SDG&E in downtown San Diego, and it would impact our building. So as you know, IT equipment does not like a ungraceful shutdown. So our team, we have a shutdown procedure. Our team dusted off that procedure and put that into play, a very quick turnaround. I wanted to thank the team because they all rearranged their weekends to accommodate that outage. We had a group of members that came on site to gracefully shut down equipment on Friday night and then resumed on Sunday to make sure that the business wasn't impacted. And I'm happy to say with that exercise, we only had one impact to hardware, and our team was able to remediate that without any data loss or any long-term damage to our infrastructure. And with that, that concludes my updates, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. You know, Michelle, when you gave that report to the audit committee, you explained that they came in and turned everything off, which included a fax machine. So I was a little surprised that you're still using a fax around here.
And I should probably correct myself. Our faxes are now in cloud, so we have cloud fax. We do have fax capabilities on our Xerox machines, so I think it's one of those things that just won't ever really go away.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any, I think that about winds it up. Do we have any questions from the committee? Do we have any comments from staff?
Yes.
I just wanted to recognize Paul Lotz. So I wanted to give you a personal congratulations for just crushing your opponent in the election. I think that's a real testament to your integrity and your service and the value that you bring to our organization. So thank you so much for agreeing to come for a second term. So really appreciate that. And Tom, I know you didn't choose to run because you have a lot going on in your life, but I'm really gracious and happy that you spent the last 8 years with us since 2017 and just really appreciate your service. So thank you very, very much. And Bobby, this is actually the end of your second term.
It is.
But you're special in that you're appointed and you have the ability to carry over. And I just really appreciate your willingness to carry over in your position until the mayor makes a recommendation to the city council and they have your replacement. So
Thank you.
I look forward to working with you for the next 10 years. So very, very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this concludes our meeting. Do we have a closed session?
We do not.
We do not. All right. Then I think my next page will say the meeting is adjourned. Is that correct? Yes. This meeting is adjourned.